Welcome back. As we're going through the history of organizational behavior, another key moment, sort of a pivotal, seminal part of the development of management and organizational behavior is known as the Hawthorne experiment. So our book discusses it briefly. Let me give you a little more background. So there was a Western Electric plant, and they were making industrial lighting. So the big lights that light up, say, a factory floor, an airplane hangar, those kind of places. And they also had a different part of the business that were winding wires around magnetic and electromagnetic cores, and these were the first relays, right? These were used in telephone switches in the very early 1920s, I believe, at the time. As luck would have it, I happen to have one here. If you can see this in the camera, right? So what we have here is a bunch of winding wires around a core here. This is the magnetic core, and when you electronically charge this pulls these metal, they're called reeds, together. They're like contacts on a switches, right? And they open and close circuits in telephone switches. So when you call the phone company or you dial the phone number in the 1920s, right, this is the way it connected the different phone lines, right? It was it was state of technology of its day, right? So in the Hawthorne plant, they had a bunch of women winding these things together. Now, when they say women in the books, what they mean are high school age girls. So teenage girls, age 16 through probably 19 years old, right? Sitting in a room, a huge warehouse of these girls, or a huge factory of these girls winding these coils, right? Winding it round and round and round, right, all day long. Right, so so that's the relay part of the business, the winding part of the business. So the lighting people wanted to run an experiment that would show that more lights increase workers' output. That way they can show that to their customers and entice their customers to buy more industrial lighting for a brighter workspace. So they didn't want to light up the whole factory. They wanted to have a controlled room where they could experiment. So they took some of the girls, some of these teenage girls, and they put them in a separate room. And they gave them, they took them away from their normal production supervisor, so they just put one of the young engineers, a guy in charge of them, and they brought him in this room and they told him they're going to run some experiments. So they know what their normal rate is at producing these relays, so they turned up the lights to see if the girls would make more parts. And they did. So they said, well, that's great. That's good news. That's what they're looking for, confirmation that more lights means more productivity. So they turned up the lights brighter, and the girls made more stuff, even more stuff, right? Great, we're making even more stuff. That's fantastic. So just to be sure, because they're engineers and wanted to be sure, they turned the lights down, thinking the productivity is going to go down. What happens? The productivity goes up. They make even more of these relays. So something's not right about that. So they turn the lights down even more, and what happens? The workers make even more stuff. So something is really wrong, and they turn the lights down really far to what is described as moonlight conditions, right? So it's like they're literally outside in a moonlit night, and then productivity finally went going down. Turns out the girls were so used to winding these, they could just about do it in the dark. So what's going on? The engineers were stumped. They didn't know. So what we do know, it's not the lights, right? The lights go up, the lights go down, they keep making more stuff. So they call in a psychologist, Elton Mayo, and he literally invents the field of industrial psychology through these activities, and he starts checking out what's going on. Well, what's going on is this. These girls were working in a sea of workers, and they were one of many. They had an older, very busy production manager who he didn't establish a interpersonal relationship with them, to put it mildly, right? Probably just grouched at them to get their job done, and that was it. When they go into the special test room, they're in a small setting. They're special. They've been picked. They get a young, pleasant guy who greets them with hellos in the morning and all that. So with the special behaviors and the special treatment, right, their reaction is, I want to do well. So when they knew the lights would change, they knew something was expected of them, so they made more stuff. And every time there was a change, they made more stuff. Right? So what happens is, it's not the lights, it's the setting, it's the morale, it's the management, right? So if you look at the slide, back to the slide, right? This gave us an indication that people are not in fact robots, right? Organizations are cooperative systems, right? How we treat our workers matters. The workers have values, the workers have feelings. And darn it, they bring them to work, right? So you, the managers, are going to have to learn to deal with that. They are, in fact, not robots. You have to deal with their emotions. You have to deal with their thoughts. You have to deal with their behavior. They have their own morals. They have their own cultures, right? Later, Elton Mayo, the psychologist, went to the one of the rooms where the guys were working, and he found out the guys always made the same number of parts no matter what. Every day they made the same number of units, just very, very steady. And so he was kind of watching work, and then one day they ran out of parts for like an hour and a half. And they made their quota. They made the same number of parts that day as every other day. So he investigates, and turns out, you might have guessed this, they had extra parts stashed in a drawer. Well, what happened is, the day they make extra parts, they hide them in a drawer. Why don't they turn them in? Why wouldn't you not turn them in? Think about that for a second. What's the company going to do if you make extra parts? They're not going to share the profits with you. What are they going to do? You may have guessed it, they increase your quota. Well, no one wants that. Very understandable. So they hide the extra parts. If you don't make enough parts on a particular day, what happens? You get in trouble. You get yelled at, they make you work over, whatever, right? That's not particularly advantageous either. So you pull the hidden parts out of the drawer, you throw them in the bin, and you make your quota, right? So what he found out was, and not only were they doing that, right, so they were sort of lying to their managers about what was going on, but they enforced a set rate. So if you were a new guy, you're enthusiastic, you want to do a great job, and so you want to work faster than the other workers, the other workers would entice them. These were all young guys working together. They would actually entice them to work the normal pace. How would they do that? They would punch them in the shoulder, right? They would actually just give them pop them in the shoulder, give them a little punch like that, right? And till they slow down to the normal race. You were called a rate buster if you worked too fast. If you worked too slow and want everybody else to do your work, you were a chiseler. What happened then? You guessed it, you got punched, right? In the shoulder. It's not going to injure you, but no one enjoys that. So they would literally punch their fellow workers until they got them to the right speed, whatever the right speed happened to be, their quota rate. Right? So again, what's going on at work has nothing to do with stopwatches and time clocks and managers. It has everything to do with morale, human action, all that. So that's why we say the Hawthorne experiments in the Western Electric plant, Hawthorne was the location, right? That's what started the human relations movement, where we realize workers have feelings, workers have morale, there's their own culture out on the floor, there's all these things going on that have nothing to do with management. Well, they have somewhat to do with management, but management needs to learn how to deal with it, right? They are not robots, right? And if you can figure out how to solve that one, you can actually get a lot more cooperation and work out of your workers.